So I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, well, in the metro Atlanta region, because everything that's inside the perimeter and Marietta can technically call themselves Atlanta. I went to public school throughout my all of school. My parents are both actors, so I guess my earliest activism was in 2001. I was only, what, two? Something like that, when there was the big strike, and there were pictures of like little baby Natalie in a stroller at the strike. Um, but I think what really got me interested to begin with was in middle school. Middle school is when three elementary schools joined together to come to Ridgeview, because my middle school was chartered. So students would get bused up from South Fulton County to come to Ridgeview, because then at the time there was a rule in place that students who were able to come to Ridgeview charter were then able to go to Riverwood charter, which was substantially better than the high school in South Fulton County. And that's when we sort of realized that we'd been a little bit more segregated, because my elementary school had kind of a mixture of like white kids, non-white kids. But then the two other elementary schools, when they got to Ridgeview, we realized that like Herds Ferry was pretty much all white. And Lake Forest was pretty much all Black and Hispanic. And we kind of knew why. It had to do something with zoning when they were building Lake Forest. And just the way that students treated each other, and also what programs students were in. So like honors classes that you were in, or honors classes that you weren't able to get into. So students who may have had the same grades as me weren't able to get into the honors classes because the administration or teachers didn't trust them to be able to do as well. I wish I knew more about how it was segregated exactly. It tends to be like the center of the city is poorer, and that's because socioeconomic status and race still tend to be pretty closely tied. It tends to be more non-white. But also, like, just outside of Atlanta, there are a lot of African Americans. And then north of Atlanta, there are a lot of white people. But then if you go out to Clarkston, which is east, you have a really strong refugee community. So it's like pockets of probably remnants of redlining. And then in 7th grade, I came up to DC to visit my congressman, who at the time was John Lewis, which was before we got gerrymandered. Learned about gerrymandering that year as well. But he invited us to lunch, which you can do if he's your congressman. He's very, very friendly. So we had lunch with him, and he said, you should come down to Selma one year for Bloody Sunday. And so my parents, being who they were like, well, of course we'll be there. So we managed to get to Selma, get into Brown AME Church, go to the service, and march across the bridge. So that was sort of like learning about the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. There was the first time I'd heard about them. This was pre-Shelby v. Holder, so there was a lot of like, oh my God, we don't want this to happen. We don't want the legislation to not be able to have any control over like voting laws. So after I saw the Legal Defense Fund, I got very excited, and I was like, maybe this is what I want to do, is go to law school and become a lawyer. So I was class president, as all the AU kids were. But I also, starting in 10th grade, would lead a trip to Selma, Alabama for the Bloody Sunday March. And that was a big thing. I was also a drama kid, and all the drama kids are pretty like out there and liberal and trying to do the right thing. So that's pretty much what I was involved in. I did the IB program, and we had a lot of discussions in our classes. So talking about ethics and then how does this apply was a really big thing for me. And having teachers who were reading like Faulkner and Toni Morrison, that really shaped me. We also read Mouse, which is this fantastic graphic novel, as well as John Lewis's graphic novel, March, which I would highly recommend. Just really talking in and about other figures of the civil rights movement through literature. Yeah, so IB is the International Baccalaureate Program, and it was created for diplomats' kids. Um, and my high school was one of the few places in Fulton County to institute it. And it's like AP, but more writing and less multiple choice. And that's also another thing that was more segregated, because starting in elementary school, if you're not able to get into those honors classes, and that we, as people in the program, realized. So it's IB. I've always been interested in psychology, and the IB program focuses on not just here are the theories and here's how we tested them, but what can you find wrong with the study ethically? So all of these populations that we've tested tend to be male and white. What are the implications? What are the implications of putting this research out? I also got really interested in the IAT, or the implicit association test, which says that, or 80% of it changes. It's an ongoing test with Harvard, but 80% of people who take it, no matter their race, across the sample, have an implicit association that Black is bad and white is good. And so that was something that really spurred a lot of my thinking, was how can this be? And then looking back at all of my education that I'd received, and even starting as small as all of the authors that we read tend to be white and male. All of my teachers tended to be white and female. You're only allowed to really talk about these things if your teacher is not white. So it's like an interesting thing there, and that really spurred what I did for my Girl Scout Gold Award project, which was creating a curriculum for March, because that makes it more accessible for like middle schoolers to start talking about it when you're learning Georgia history in 7th grade. And then also in high school, because there's a lot to explore in a graphic novel. So that definitely spurred that.
Okay.
I think in elementary school, my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Ezard, because she made, we all voted in the election that year in our school, because our school had to be closed. And we all kind of had this feeling and this buzz that it was a big, important election in 2008. And I just remember her being so excited about President Obama winning that we didn't have any class. We watched the inauguration. And so just like feeling that excitement about civic duty in a way that I hadn't totally experienced before outside of my family kind of really honed my focus. And we also participated in like little debates. We had these little Scholastic magazines that had profiles of the candidates, and she would lead us in debates for that. And we'd talk about issues as much as like a 4th grader can understand what healthcare means. But in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, there are people who don't believe the same things that I do when it comes to like education and healthcare and taxes and what fairness is. In that sense. At that time, because of my elementary school, it was pretty integrated. I wasn't an outlier, but there was a clear line all of the people who were saying, no, we shouldn't have healthcare, what they'd heard from their parents were white. Like that entire group, compared to who was supporting Obama at that time, our little fourth grade Sal was supporting Obama at that time. It was more of a mixture of different students. My parents were large influences. I watched a lot of PBS, so I always like to say like Mr. Rogers, Arthur. Um, Watched a lot of Animal Planet, so like Steve Irwin as well. Just these people who really, the way they treated other people was very much like everyone should be equal, but they aren't right now, and we need to work towards that, without outright saying, everyone is, I don't know how to put it, but like things are not right now, and we have the ability to make it better. I've always loved to write in third grade, and I never really thought that I would be a journalist until I got to college. And in like 10th grade, I wrote a stupid satire sketch for my drama class, called Thinking Inside the Box News. And my teacher thought it was hilarious. Everyone else in the class was like, I don't understand, who's John Boner? Um, um, but that was like a great moment. Like that was a great year, being able to write, I wouldn't say crap because it has some substance to it. Substantial crap is what I was writing. Um, I really enjoyed it a lot. And so then when I came to college, I got really involved with the things you're supposed to be involved with. Trying to be very civically engaged, but then expanding my vision to being civically engaged can mean calling out bullshit, through satire, because some of my mom's and dad's friends who are actors do that with they write limericks, and that's really being civically engaged. So kind of shifting my focus for sure. Um, I had a lot of people who are like, you should be a politician. And in my head, I was like, God, no. I have a mug that a friend gave me in like 10th grade that's like, that I used to say all the time because I thought I was being snappy. It's like, I could either be oh, I forgot what it was, but it's something about like I could be an actor or a politician. They're pretty much the same thing. Um, uh, but I was thinking about where I wanted to go, and then it just all kind of came really fast. Where, like, shoot, I was part of the Posse program. I thought I wanted to go to Brandeis. The Posse program is like you get full tuition, but I didn't make it all the way through. Luckily, I'd applied to other places. Um, and then AU was on my list because I'd done a congressional workshop here one summer. Um, I just kind of fell into it. I got into the honors program, so I got a substantial scholarship. My big things were like the money that it'll cost me to get here. How much scholarship are you giving me? Access to public transportation, um, museums, so learning on my own, faculty, um, and that's kind of what it boiled down to, was being able to be part of the honors program, so the smaller group that got to do really one-on-one learning, like with each other and with faculty. Since then, we've worked to change it because dual teaching did not work out. But that really drew me, was money, obviously, but all of the other things that came with it. And then DC was a really interesting place for me because of like the museums really drew me in. If I wanted to intern on the Hill, I had that ability. That's something that AU really advertises, is you can intern at the Senate, you can intern in Congress, but also like the nonprofits. At the time, I didn't know if I wanted to focus on psychology, so having like the NIH, and just the ability to do a lot of things. And honestly, the UPass, that was my deciding thing. Between like Davidson and American University, it was like, the UPass. And also, there's a want that a lot of people who are going to college have sometimes in the South, which is like, I either am committing to going to like a big state university, or I'm saying that I want to get the heck out. And I was part of that. I want to get the heck out because you think, okay, I'm going to leave the South, and a lot of this nasty politics and racism, I'll either be able to get away from it for a while, or it just won't exist, which in the back of your mind, you know that's not true. New York City is the most segregated city, or one of the more segregated cities. So wanting to get out, mostly. Yeah. I think now that I'm 3 years here, there are a lot more similarities than I initially thought or hoped for. Like the while it's more liberal in political leaning on this campus, if you did a poll, the amount of involvement, like actual involvement, is about the same. So trying to get people to go to like a DC public hearing, something that might really affect people at the school, is going to be the same as trying to get people in my high school to go to like a Sandy Springs hearing about safety. So it's very similar in that respect. And I think, besides from the people who may be more affluent here, a lot of people are here because of the opportunity and kind of that cost-benefit analysis between opportunity and money. So I have a lot of friends that ended up going to UGA because of the scholarship that they got. I have a lot of friends here who are here because of the scholarship that they got, and what school they were able to get into. But culture-wise, like outside of DC is a lot different. You'll have someone who will be like rude to your face, which honestly I prefer, compared to you don't know behind your back. I think the campus is a really special place because you have people from all over the United States. So you have a bunch of different cultures and really wanting to get to know. We're a PWI, considering all of people who really want to get to know each other on a different level compared to everyone thinks they know who you are, where I grew up, and within my family. So it's like give or take, for sure. I think it's really similar. With the creation of the National Stadium, is parallels the SunTrust Park in Atlanta, minus the like taking of land part. Yeah, it's like very, very similar. The gentrification of areas, and making communities, taking communities apart in that way. Yeah, it's like wow, it's sadly similar. It's not actually no, it has always been like along the river in DC has been the segregation point, where it's been north and south in Atlanta. Yeah. I was really mad when I found out about the incident, because you think that the university would take care of it better than they take care of it outside of Atlanta, where you know they want to sweep things like that under the rug and pretend like it doesn't exist. And so it's just like been this slow boil, I think, starting my freshman year of like, what can I do? You know, I'm involved in a lot of things that work on the student level. And then it just kind of is like, you know what? I want to write. I got to write about it. Yeah, it's like that slow anger of where can I put this where it can be effective and make fun of this institution while also saying here's a way that it could be changed. Yeah, for sure. The slow boil. So the Rival is unaffiliated with the university. So it started off as an independent publication, I think at George Washington. And then AU picked up the Rival, and they have all these little baby rivals all over the US now. So it's a big parent company and a bunch of little college companies that are kind of independently run from the main Rival HQ. We're kind of like the Onion, but less popular right now, simply because we aren't, I don't know, like students know about us, but we don't have a big presence right now. And the Rival was really attractive to me because I have a friend that writes for the Rival and has written for the Rival for a while. So I knew that it was good people. And also I'm not a journalism major, and I don't know if that's what I want to do in the long run. So it was kind of like a fun thing. That's why I got attracted to the Rival instead of some of our other fabulous campus publications. I don't know, it seems more low commitment to me. Yeah, for sure. I think all three are trying to give viewpoints of student life and understand the student population and give news and information to the student population at the same time. I would say the Eagle and the Black Print, since they're affiliated with the university, have to go through the university to get things published. That also means that they don't have to raise money at the beginning of every year so that they can print and publish their things. We joke, oh, the Eagle is like the goody two-shoes cousin that like is really tight with, like the grandparents, which is like the university. And the Rival, not so much. But at the same time, we have no legal backing with anything, so we have to be very careful about what we publish. And there's a lot of thought about, is what we publish going to contribute and reflect a new narrative or a less heard narrative on campus? Are we adding to the conversation? And can we be funny about it at the same time? Because we're unaffiliated, we have a really strong responsibility to keep all of those things in mind so that we can stay alive as an organization, and make sure that we aren't just like, oh God, like the Rival posted another thing about something we already knew was happening, and this isn't a new take. So definitely but at the same time, the Eagle and the Black Print have that same responsibility. I don't know. Like, the responsibility is there and we take it seriously. So I can really only speak from my experience with the Rival and what I've encountered with the Eagle. Since the Black Print is so new, I don't know if I can truly speak on that. But it's this exciting new arts magazine and articles that's from a viewpoint that a lot of AU students don't see or choose to understand. I think with like the accountability part, it comes from, because we don't have to ask permission, can we publish this? We have to, I don't know, call out some of the bullshit when we see it. For example, some of the investigative pieces that we're working on is really doing deep dives into some of the institutions that we have. So we were considering doing a really deep dive about the black mold on campus, for example. and like whether it exists, why students might be concerned with it existing. So someone wrote a satire piece on that within the Rival about, oh my God, it's the black mold is taking over and running around. And then also like the construction. We make fun of it all the time because it's something that it's pervasive, it's everywhere. And kind of asking the questions like, why is it still here? Why are we still doing this? Is this really carbon neutrality? Even though it was in the style of like an H.P. Lovecraft monster that got, pulled up, or joking about like the chemical weapons that the Army Corps of Engineers is still trying to clean up. Like, we joke about it because then it brings it into the light a little bit more, and then maybe the Eagle or AWOL might pick it up and do an even deeper dive.
What is AWOL?
AWOL is from what I understand, the investigative journalism magazine. So they do more long-term pieces. They have actually done a piece on the chemical weapons that we have here under Watkins. There are a lot. I think it comes from a lack of understanding of the bureaucracy that we have on campus, self-imposed, unnecessary. I'm also, so like we have a lot of positions. So we have PCDI, or the President's Council on Diversity and Inclusion, which I don't think a single person feels like that's really increasing diversity and inclusion by having the students who are on that council are white passing. No matter what their other identities are, they look cis and white passing. So it's like a lack of representation in the bureaucracy that we have. So if you do have all of these voices, not a lot of them are reflecting what little diversity that we currently have. What is it? 30% non-white students. Median income of $150,000. So I think that's a big thing. Also, I work in the Health Promotion and Advocacy Center as the alcohol and other drugs intern. So something that we encounter and deal with a lot is issues of not wanting to face recovery when that comes to substances like alcohol, prescription drugs, and other drugs. And that and that goes to a lot of other issues, because sometimes that goes to a core of like people not feeling comfortable in spaces, off campus, not necessarily on campus, but at the same time, yes, because we do have freshmen drinking in dorms. And like a larger want for community change, but an inability to do it somehow. We haven't quite figured out how, because we don't have that community feel. We have a lot of what they call in community psychology first order change, which is on its face, it looks like there are changes being made, but you don't have the second order or the deep structural changes that are needed to help support students who might need mental health services, students who need recovery resources, students who don't feel welcome on campus because of like our public safety, because of people who are in administration, because of staff, because we don't know how to report bias incidents, student employees who feel extremely dissatisfied with their jobs and how all the processes there are not working. Yeah, I don't know, that's like a big grocery list, of a lot of the problems on campus that really come to the core of not wanting to admit that we have the problems. I would say, so a lot of the staff are aware of it. As someone who's also student staff, as a desk receptionist, like talking to my supervisors, they're phenomenal and they understand the issues. It's just like, where do we go next? and also interacting with freshmen. It's like a different type of interaction than what I realized as a freshman. Whether or not it was there, I didn't realize it. People having increased anger about like AUX or the experience class. And their cause for anger is not like, ugh, you're telling me about all these resources on campus. I feel like a child. Then they can't do their laundry. But the anger at like, why do I have to learn about diversity and inclusion and how to help people who tell you about their sexual assault? Like, people are complaining about that, which really gets to me. So the campus climate is not stupidity, but ignorance. There's this, my dad's favorite bumper sticker is, you can fix ignorant, but you can't fix stupid. I think it's fixable. You can fix the ignorance that's on campus because people haven't been exposed to a lot of things. At least the people that I've interacted with haven't been exposed to a lot of things and don't understand the core of the problem. It's just a like, whether or not they want to change something. It's a really hard line that I've had a really hard time with. Because satire, you make people aware of the issue, you make them laugh about it because they think it's ridiculous, and then they go, that's ridiculous. How can we stop this? But I've had a really hard time towing that line because I wanted to do a piece on, you know, when there's that person that comes after class and talks with you and just holds you hostage in conversation and makes you feel pretty uncomfortable with who you are, but you can't put your finger on it. I wanted to do a satire piece on that. But then my editor and I talked it out and realized that we should probably just do something more narrative and more serious. So sometimes, like, you can joke about the black molds, you can joke about the construction, you can make allusions to the bureaucracy as it exists and how it's not quite effective. But sometimes you need to take a step back and realize maybe this could be an opinion piece. Maybe this could be a narrative piece that's not quite as satire-y. A lot of my pieces are more of the like, here's my knee-jerk reaction, I have to say. The last one I did about the water thing actually stemmed from overhearing some first-year students talking about like, oh, well, if I can, you know, if I get sick, will I be able to get a discount on my tuition? And I was like, well, not our infrastructure problem this time. I think the piece that actually got the fewest likes and views was more important to me, talking about I forgot what our final title was for it, but the fear, talking about those interactions where you don't know if you can report them and what are we going to do about that. And that's something that internally the university is trying to make changes about. And externally, students just, we talk about it a lot, but we don't know what steps to take next. So I think student activism today can be a combination of things, and it has to be a combination of things. So having people who go out to protest and to march and to write manifestos and demands. And then people who, this is the biggest thing between like, am I an activist or not? Because I tend to be working within the system within AU. So like with my role interning at HPAC, I feel like I'm within the system, but I'm working to make change. Sometimes people at like AWOL or the Eagle will feel like they're working within the system, but they're still getting information out. So that's important. Like the live stream of the protest was incredibly important. Even though we make fun of Facebook activism, sometimes you need that to get people who might not otherwise be engaged to be engaged. And then where the rival fits in is making sure that we're speaking from true experiences, not just for a knee-jerk reaction. making sure our articles have purpose and not just perspective. And reaching out to our community is really important. And not being as afraid to tackle those big issues